Welcome to the Royal Road School of Carmelite Prayer. We have been studying a series of articles written by a prominent Teresian scholar, Tomas Alvarez, a Carmelite friar from Spain, now deceased. And today, the last article that we're looking at is entitled Learning to Pray. In other words, learning to pray according to the Teresian method. So, Teresa's father was an early and successful disciple of Teresa's in prayer, and later her brother Lorenzo, who had returned from America, made a great progress in a very short time. Other letters show a teaching mission to a variety of people. On those journeys through Castile and Andalusia, who knows what other friends she may have attracted to prayer? The covered wagons in which she and her nuns traveled were to some extent a traveling school of prayer. Ribera, an early biographer of Teresa, wrote, "They traveled in covered carts and organized themselves as if they were in their monastery. They always brought a little bell, which they rang for the regular times of prayer and silence, and a sand glass to measure the time. At such times, all had to be silent. Afterwards, she rewarded their silence by giving them all something to eat." To grasp Teresa's method of teaching prayer, we must examine her experience. She was convinced that her life only really began when she made it a life of prayer. From then on, she lived a friendship with the Lord. Prayer activated the friendship and kept Teresa in contact with Him. In spite of the hustle and the bustle of her life, she was always the nun who talked to God. This inner attitude allowed her to easily rise above life's circumstances. In Teresa's writings, prayer is the determining factor that introduces the reader into the atmosphere of her dialogue with God. She introduces God in her writing as a party to her conversation rather than as a subject. She writes as if talking to the reader, but alternates her conversation between the reader and God. Her dialogue with the reader is so simple and sincere that when she turns to talk to God, the reader feels included in that conversation. When a reader really enters into Teresa's writings, he cannot avoid the principal personage, God. Teresa's writings reveal those parts of her life that serve to tell the reader what vocal and mental prayer or meditation and contemplation are, and that provide an opportunity for Teresa to try and pray with Him. A typical example of her teaching approach is in The Way of Perfection. It's a book in which she sets out to teach her own nuns how to pray. The very first chapter is a model of her technique of alternating dialogue. She is writing for her nuns, but she talks to them and to God alternatively. Her aim was to tell them the reason for the life they were reading. Amen. So this article will be continued, and this is Father Alvarez, a prominent Spanish scholar of Teresa of Avila, now deceased, who is telling us about how Teresa taught prayer to her nuns and those around her. I hope you're enjoying this, and God bless you for following along. Amen.